Yo, what's going on out there, YouTube family? We are gonna talk pretty fast and concise because we're about to go through a few different things about the post-credit scene for Venom. Let There Be Carnage. Me and Lucas are here. What's going on, Lucas?
What's going on?
Not
So hold up,
much,
we're
man.
spoiling things for people.
We are completely spoiling things for people. So if you have not seen Venom 2 and don't know what we're talking about, leave now, watch the movie, and then come back because we're
Even though
about to
at this
dive in.
point, we saw what Venom's opening weekend is. I can't imagine most of you haven't seen it at this point.
You know what? It would be interesting if some people left the movie before the post-credit scene too. I don't know why they would do
I
that.
don't think they did. If they did, you're slow at this point. It's people who sit through dramas like it's supposed to have a post-credit scene at this point. Like,
True.
why would you be leaving?
That is definitely a thing nowadays. So, all right. So let's go ahead and just kind of dive into what actually kind of happened at the end post-credit scene. So I'll try to pull up like a small little image or whatever. Here we go. I got it ready. So at the end of the movie, Venom and Eddie are kind of on a beach, I believe, and they're just kind of like chilling and talking and reminiscing about themselves, and they're trying to figure out what's their next steps. Then we go to the post-credit scene. They're sitting in a bed, and it's really dark. And I think the backdrop is they're in Mexico, I believe, at that time.
Yeah, they're in the bed, and Venom is talking to Eddie, and he tells him about the history and how much if he released all that history into Eddie's puny little brain, it would explode.
Right.
And then we get to a moment, it seems that Venom is showing Eddie something in his mind, and then Spider-Verse happens.
Right.
Best way to say
it. Yeah, that's literally the best way to say it. Because a lot of you guys know that there's a huge history behind the symbiotes and behind Venom that I don't feel like going into. We don't have the amount of time to even talk about. But I was kind of like, oh, okay. He said, I'm going to show you just a small slither of it. And at that moment, things start to distort in the room. The room shifts to day from nighttime to day. And Eddie notices something on the television. And
hold up, you're skipping the best part when Venom said, hold up, I didn't do it. Was it me?
Yeah, he did say that. He did actually say that. He was like, yeah, no, I don't, what happened? What's going on? And all of a sudden he's kind of looking on the television and you see J. Jonah Jameson. J. Jonah Jameson is talking about none other than Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Tom Holland's Spider-Man, which we know from the last movie, Far From Home, has been outed, as Spider-Man. And so J. Jonah Jameson is talking about that and saying yada, yada, yada. And he's like, Venom's like, there's something about that guy or something like that. And then he kind of like licks like
he said he looks
silhouette.
tasty.
Yeah, that's right. And he licks the silhouette of Spider-Man. And then we kind of end the credit scene with somebody in the bathrooms like, what are you doing in my what are you doing in my hotel? As though for him, he doesn't understand how Eddie's even there. And so I have some things I wanted to talk about, but I'm really interested in Lucas's thought processes because Lucas has been talking about this is going to happen for a while. He's been saying that this is all Sony. This is not Marvel. This is all Sony's doing of what they've been trying to line up. And the reason why Venom 1 and 2 are PG-13, there's a reason behind everything that's been happening. So Lucas, I fold to you on this one, and then I'll go into my theories.
Well, Sony's always said that the goal was to keep Venom PG-13 because eventually Spider-Man would be added to him, and it can't be rated R because you don't want to backtrack that way with Venom and Spider-Man. So they always wanted to leave their options open. As it pertains just to the end credit scene, without going to everything else that I think, not yet at least, so we get Sam's thought about the end credit scene. Here, I was given a very interesting, different take than I initially had. What I initially thought was clearly this is about what happens in No Way Home and Doctor Strange and how everything is supposed to change. And keep in mind that Venom was always supposed to come out before Spider-Man. So we just didn't, it may not make for some people a lot of sense, even though if it's not making sense, it's because you're not paying attention at this point, that those impacts will happen and it would change Venom. But after the screening of this last week, myself, Sam, Najir from Big Old Belt, and Aris from Three Black Geeks was talking about this, and I can't remember which one of the three he brought up. Wait a minute, that seemed to like be a little blank of more of a Spider-Verse blank than it was time shifting blank. And I think that is where this will get interesting, because a lot of people have forgotten that when the last Spider-Man movie came out and Sony was pulling back from Marvel, one of the deals that were made for Marvel to get involved in 2 more Spider-Man projects, which was the Spider-Man No Way Home and Spider-Man can be in 1 more of their films.
Right.
But part of that deal that a lot of people left out was Sony saying, this makes Spider-Man more flexible on what we can do with him. And I think that flexible part of it is them basically telling you at this point, we decide how Spider-Man moves. I mean, if you ever pay attention to these 3, technically at this point, 3 Spider-Man movies that are ingrained in the MCU in some way, shape, form, or fashion, where's the actual MCU connection that needs to stay in any of them?
Right.
I think Sony's done an amazing job of saying, hey, yes, you can use Spider-Man for your MCU films because you needed him at the point when that deal was made. But as it pertains to the Spider-Man movies, there is no real MCU connection that's needed. What the MCU has done is they've branched off other things through a Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, correct.
But they've not overly connected Spider-Man to anybody in the MCU now, where if Sony decides, okay, we're done with that, we're just going to continue with our own movies, that he has to stay there.
Right. No, that's perfect. And so the thing I was going to say, and I want to paint a small little picture for you guys. If you looked at Venom 1 in the theaters, or if you own Venom 1, you know, at the very end of Venom 1, is 2 different end credit scenes. There's one where Cletus Cassidy kind of introduced himself. That's the post credit scene. But the end credit scene starts off with something that's basically along this line right here, where it says, "Meanwhile, in another universe." And then you see, you know, Into the Spider-Verse. That was our first look. It was a whole opening shot. It showed Miles Morales going to the gravesite because Peter had already died. And then it showed like the chase sequence where the police pursued him and all that. And it was kind of our first introduction to Miles Morales. And I was kind of like, when that happened, I was like, why use "meanwhile in another universe" instead of just being like, okay, here's a tagline? It felt like it was a connection there. And so when we ended up watching Spider-Verse, and like you said, we came out of it, I was like, did you guys feel like when everything happened, it felt like Into the Spider-Verse is when, you know, when we saw like Ben Parker, we saw all of them, there was like a small little divot that kind of happened. And like, sure enough, I was like, the more I was thinking about it, I was like, this feels like this is the Spider-Verse situation first before we even getting into, you know, the Doctor Strange side of No Way Home. And the other thing I was going to say about that is that this is the weird thing. So the credit scene showed J. Jonah Jameson talking about Peter Parker being Spider-Man. But the whole point of No Way Home is that Peter's trying to avoid that because he's worried about what's going to happen, the ramifications of how this is going to affect everything. So if anything, if we would see Eddie Brock in a situation where he wouldn't know that he's Spider-Man, it would be a situation where later on it's like, oh, okay, now things have changed. So this is where we're at. So this felt like this was a situation that happened before anything that happened with No Way Home. And I was kind of like, because I assumed just like Lucas did. I was like, oh, okay, this is the No Way Home side of like, okay, this is connected to this, and this is the catalyst. This is how we got Venom over to No Way Home in whatever capacity they're going to use him. But then I was like, well, no, this could be Sony literally taking us into a Spider-Verse scenario. And that's where this gets fascinating to me. And I was kind of like, if we're going down this route, then anything is truly possible, because this may not just be about, you know, a multiverse MCU situation. This may be indicative to me of a broader Spider-Verse scenario, where that's where I'm more excited about anything than nothing. And I was just curious, Lucas, because we hadn't kind of gone into the ramifications of what that means. Um, but yeah,
Oh, it
you
just
kind
means that,
of
Sony is doing exactly what I've been saying they would be doing for the last 5 years, which was the whole goal for this whole deal with them and Marvel. One, it was that Marvel needed Spider-Man. Marvel needed Spider-Man for a couple of things. Sony, as part of that deal, decided, we might as well use your name to like help rebuild the character again. And in the meantime, Sony was always planning on building movies through their other Spider-Man
right,
properties. That way, when we interject Spider-Man again, it's not the build Spider-Man up anymore. We don't have to build him up. We already have him established. I mean, one of the most important things that people, again, are forgetting about that you should really pay attention to, Morbius was supposed to come out before both of these movies.
correct,
In the trailer for Morbius, we clearly see Morbius walking past a poster that has Spider-Man labeled as a murderer. We also know by the end of the last Spider-Man movie, that was the label that was going out about Spider-Man, is that
right,
he was a murderer. Then people say, well, maybe that's a different Spider-Man because they saw the picture on the wall and immediately thought of Sam Raimi Spider-Man because of a picture on the wall. But then Vulture shows up.
right.
And you're like, wait a minute. And it
How does
can't
that make
necessarily
sense?
be Sam
Right,
Raimi Spider-Man. That actually has to be the new Spider-Man for Vulture to show up at the end of that trailer. So
right,
what is being said now is that Morbius was supposed to introduce a few elements of this connection happening.
mm-hmm.
And then you were supposed to get this from Venom. And then it goes into No Way Home, which Sony has said, if you want to know the plans for Spider-Man, just wait till No Way Home comes out because everything will become crystal clear. So Sony has been setting this up. I know that sounds weird to some of you MCU people right here. Now, Sony has been setting this up for about 3 or 4 years of how they were going to progress this storyline with Spider-Man. It was not just a situation of them striking a deal with the MCU and MCU would run Spider-Man. That was never going to happen. What they decided then was, let's build these characters up and then we'll bring Spider-Man back. But the way we bring Spider-Man back is going to be the more interesting part because the Spider-Verse is playing a huge part of this. And I think eventually we'll realize that while that was also the best Spider-Man movie ever made, that movie had more impact on Sony's moves moving forward than
Right,
anything else that is set to come out. I think that was the catalyst more than
right,
anything else was that Spider-Verse film. All you really are waiting for is for them to do Spider-Verse 2 and those characters go live action. And then it would
right.
explain even more to people. But again, just pay attention to what you're seeing. Most of you all are excited for the next Spider-Man movie, not because it's an MCU character at all in it. You're excited because Doc Ock is back, which is from the Sony movies. Toby and possibly Andrew are coming back, which are
Yep.
from the Sony movies. Jamie Foxx is coming back, which is from the Sony movies. Willem Dafoe is coming back, which is from the Sony. Pay attention to how many of these characters they're interjecting back from their old Spider-Man projects into the new Spider-Man situation. I
Right,
think that's something you got to pay attention to because that's important.
right. And there's another thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about. So going back and harping to what Venom was saying to Eddie, like showing a connection to where he's come from, thousands of years. And I
Mhm.
think that even in that conversation, he said that, the amount of knowledge that we've carried on transcends even universes, right?
Mhm.
And so I was like, wait, hold up, hold up, hold up. So, in all honesty, Venom could have memories from other Venoms in a different universe. We
Mhm.
already know Topher Grace's Venom was established with, Tobey Maguire's. We already know even Tobey Maguire was connected to that. And so what he could be feeling when he said, "Oh, he looks tasty," because a lot of us, even like I think Nate was like, "Well, it doesn't make sense. Why would he have any kind of connection to this spider?" If it is true, what he was even saying in that small amount of detail that the Venom, symbiote is connected all over different, multiverses and generations, then there could be a direct connection to the Venoms that were before. and not even in what we even think. It could be the games, it could be, the movies. So there is a direct finite connection there with Eddie and Venom in correlation to Spider-Man, that I think that this is going to bleed into, like I said, not just a Spider-Verse, but literally whatever Sony can expand it out to be, because there's so much there. And even with the way that this movie ends, with this post-credit scene, everything that's happened in the first two movies could be completely different moving forward. Because
I about to say, yeah, that's the change of it, is that Venom is no longer in his own universe anymore.
Whatever his universe was,
he's no longer there. But then what you got to question is he now transported to the Spider-Man universe with Morbius, who's already technically in that Spider-Man universe?
Yep.
Like, that's going to be the interesting part, because Sony always said it first. Yeah, Venom is separate, but wait down the line and then things will be revealed more. When the Spider-Verse film came out, and Sony was like, yeah, we're going to do one eventually, but we're not rushing to do it. Right. And when they said that, people just assumed that No Way Home is a Spider-Verse movie. And it's like, no Way Home may be the setup for a Spider-Verse movie. That's why all of a sudden you got rumors of a confirm of a Madam Web movie coming out. Spider-Woman series coming out. Like, the way that they've moved the pieces around, all the way around this character, including the Craven movie, which we know has a director, a writer, and a star attached to it, and a director and writer who said Spider-Man's in this movie. Like, that's one thing they let go a long time ago and didn't hide about that. They know Spider-Man's in the movie. So you just got to wonder, after No Way Home, what's the impact of Spider-Man?
So yeah,
because he still has one Marvel project left at that point.
Well, that's the question I wanted to bring to your attention, because you did say something really specific that hit home with me after going to the movie. They said, and you said this, Spider-Man, but we don't know what Spider-Man they're going to continue with, and we don't know what Sony is going to do with what actor that's going to play Spider-Man. Because it may not be Peter Parker. It may be a different actor playing Peter Parker. We just know Spider-Man. And I think that's the thing that makes this a so interesting concept, because this is almost like a flashpoint. At the end of No Way Home, whatever the universe was, no matter what, is going to be effectively different from that point for whatever Spider-Man is left that comes out of it. And so my question to you, Lucas, is what does that mean? Like, what does that mean for Sony? What does that mean for Marvel? Because now, like you said, everything now is going to be put into the molding, and it hasn't been put in the fire yet. So I'm curious, like, your thoughts and concepts on what that's going to be.
Well, it just changes completely from what everybody's accustomed to at this point. Let's just put it like that. Tom Holland has been very adamant that his contract is up, and that this is his last Spider-Man film right now, currently. He's always said that. This is my last time appearing as Spider-Man. I always said that is very interesting, because Marvel has one more appearance left with Spider-Man, and it's not with Tom Holland. Because Marvel can't cast Spider-Man. Only Sony can cast Spider-Man. So then what happens at the end of No Way Home? Does Andrew Garfield's contract as Spider-Man still exist?
That's what I was going to ask you. That's exactly. He only had 2 movies.
Yeah, he didn't sign on for just 2 movies. We always knew this. He signed on for more than 2 movies. So if his contract still exists as Spider-Man, does Sony say, hey, we did a lot of this moving around to build this back up, to reintroduce Andrew Garfield Spider-Man? Could that be why they're so coy on Andrew Garfield being in this coming up movie? Is he the big catalyst of it? Like, it leaves questions, but that's what Sony has done for like the last 3 years, is they revealing as little as humanly possible. They don't like do press runs about exactly what's going to happen with these movies. All you'll get is, hey, we're doing this movie. We're doing this movie. It leaves you to attempt to piece together what these movies mean. And then amazingly, in trailers, they'll reveal something to you, and you'll be like, wait a minute, like the Morbius trailer or the No Way Home trailer, when you get Well, Alfred didn't care when he decided to tell everyone that he was in the movie before the
Right.
trailer came out.
Him and Jamie both were like just spitting out. So I was like, what in the world y'all
But
doing?
again, these are people always got to remember these are people under Sony contracts. No one involved with a Spider-Man project, even if you think it's an MCU film, none of them are under a Marvel or Disney contract. They are only under a Sony contract. So it really just depends on what Sony thinks is their idea moving forward. And I am a firm believer at this point, No Way Home is going to give you some stuff. Please pay attention to Spider-Verse 2, which I think is the biggest thing for them right now. I don't even think I think No Way Home is the setup.
So the weird thing about Spider-Verse 2 is that they've got different directors and writers. Is that correct? Or they got different director, I think.
They have a different director. Lord and Miller are still the producers behind the project.
Okay. Because I was always wondering, it's kind of like, who's to say that Spider-Verse 2 is going to be completely animated?
No, I'm just waiting for the end of the film when it doesn't.
So you think that there's going to be a transitional point where these characters are going to be on a live action scale?
I would say key characters will end up going live action. I think Sony is very enamored with Miles becoming live action. I think that's what they really, really want. But the bigger character that they want to go live action is Spider-Gwen.
Spider-Gwen, yeah.
That is the one they want to go live action because that is the biggest. In all honesty, I know people love Peter Parker. Spider-Gwen is the biggest character. And you got to decide, what are you going to do with her? And if you manage to do her and Miles, and then it shifts to them being live action, then again, that's the Madam Web situation. Again, people at first found it very odd that it was talks about a Madam Web movie, or I don't know if it's a movie or television show. I can't remember right now. But even bringing up that name and saying, hey, we're doing a project with Madam Web, when everyone knows Madam Web doesn't necessarily fight people. So they're like, well, what is the part of, well, even though the new iteration of her does fight people. But again, it was, what is the point of this project overall?
Right.
Madam Web becomes the catalyst, is technically the catalyst of a Spider-Man universe, is Madam Web.
Yeah, and if you go back to the animated series, one of the biggest parts about that was her trying to preserve like the Spider-Verse in and of itself. Like she was the person that's like, oh, okay, we need to coordinate this, get this to work, and there's so many different implications with it. And I appreciate your question, Ultimate Fight fans. Vulture is in Morbius, so did Vulture get sent to the Spider-Verse? So I think the bigger question, honestly, Ultimate, is that we don't know at what time that takes place.
Oh no, no.
We don't know if this takes place after.
No, I would say rewind that, because he said, did Vulture get sent to the Venomverse? Here's the problem. I don't think Morbius was ever in that universe with Venom. I think he was always in the universe with Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Like, that's the key part. I think he may have always been in the universe with Spider-Man, and Venom just got shifted to that universe.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference. I think Venom got shifted to that universe.
So, okay, so
we've never pinpointed anyone else being in the universe with Venom, ever.
The only connection's been the Daily Bugle, and there was never like any, blip about an Avenger or Spider-Man or anything. So yeah, you're right. But so this is the question I have for you then. Going into No Way Home, when you got like, presumably Sandman, a Lizard, Electro, yada yada yada, there's different there's dual versions of certain characters that they can be able to maneuver forward with. Do you think that it's like Sony just playing like, okay, we're going to use our best card, or do you think that they're going to play with us because it's a multiverse situation?
Because of the multiverse situation.
Okay.
This movie was made to help Marvel and Sony in two separate ways. If we can branch off Spider-Man because of a multiverse situation, we'll do it.
Yeah.
Like it's very simple here. It's not even a question about that part of it. And it's like, okay, Marvel needs Spider-Man to launch Doctor Strange 2 because no one cared about a Doctor Strange 2 before this situation came to fruition. So that's why Doctor Strange is in this movie, and that's why people always question, why the hell would you need Doctor Strange in the Spider-Man movie? That's why you need to have him be the catalyst for their complete multiverse situation, while on the other hand, attempting possibly to give Spider-Man the out that Sony has been wanting him to have, and reintroducing Spider-Man into their films. But
Right.
also the whole time saying, and I know people hate this, remember when Amy said when the first Spider-Man movie came out and people questioned her about Venom and him being in the MCU, and she said, of
Oh,
course
I
he is.
remember that. That's
She said,
right.
yes, of course he is. And then
Because
Kevin's like, no, Venom's not necessarily in the universe. And she said, yes, let me clarify that. In a roundabout way, he's involved in it, but he's not in the MCU. People didn't understand that the roundabout way was Spider-Man is the roundabout way. And
right.
I think that is the key. Again, they've dropped hints for a couple of years towards people now.
They
It's just
have.
that this end credit scene started to put it in fruition for some people who maybe didn't get what they were saying about things because they were extremely coy on how things would be involved in interchangeable with one another. It's
Right.
just that people automatically assume this means Venom is in the MCU, and it's like, no, think about it the other way around. Does this
Right.
mean that this is the chance for them to remove Spider-Man from the MCU? Because again, always remember at the end of the last Spider-Man movie, when Sony said, yeah, we don't need this deal anymore, we're fine, and everybody was crying, Sony still had their plan in place because they're
Right.
like, yeah, we kind of don't. It's not affecting us that Doctor Strange can't be in this movie. Like,
Mm,
we'll do it in another way. That's not going to affect us in any way. And then they came back to the table, and Disney took the exact deal that
mhm.
Sony offered them up front in the first place.
Right.
Because that's when people thought Disney had the leverage. And it's like, no, they don't.
Right.
Sony knows already how this Spider-Verse situation is going to work out for them.
Them.
That's
Yeah.
all they cared about is how is it going to work out for us?
Yep.
And when you have someone as ruthless as Tom Rothman is, who is the head of Sony, please understand, he is not a person who's just out here making deals to make deals. This is
Nah.
not the Amy run Sony that people remember. This is a little different. And I said that, and Sam remember, I said that the moment he was brought on for Sony. I said,
Yeah.
oh, that is a very interesting move. This is literally the man who shaped Fox for 30 years. The moment he left Fox, you got X-Men Apocalypse. Like it's a completely different shift here. And I think Sony will only team with Marvel if it benefits them.
Right.
But now we got a question. What benefits them with a deal with Marvel moving forward?
I think that honestly, well, I haven't seen Bond, but I was gonna say this may be the perfect small little exit for for both parties, and they can still benefit from it. Um, and just kind of figuring out what they do with a Spider-Man character
And
for
he still
the
has one more
MCU.
movie. Keep
Yeah,
in mind that,
exactly.
people. He still has one more appearance set up after No Way Home. He still has one more movie set up for the MCU because I'm a firm believer what Sony could actually do, and I'm thinking in my mind a lot lately that they're going to do is say, hey, we can make a deal with him, with you all, and Spider-Man can show up in certain movies,
Yeah.
but we have the say so on how, even though they do now too, but we have even more of a say so on how he shows up in your movies.
Right, because we don't want to affect our universe that we're kind of building too.
And that's the key part of Sony saying when this last deal was struck is that this deal makes Spider-Man more flexible.
Hmm.
And I think that again, that's the key part to pay most attention to. But making Spider-Man more flexible means we can move him around a hell of a lot more if need be.
Right. This is the weird thing, and I'm gonna say this. I feel like if Andrew Garfield, and this is, I don't want to knock Tom Holland, but I feel like if Andrew Garfield was reintroduced into whatever universe that they're building, Sony's building, and made him the new established or finite established Spider-Man at the current time, I feel like eventually the progression would be to a Miles Morales, just based on the tone and the style of his universe that they kind of built. Like, I feel like the tone makes me believe, like, okay, I can see this leading to a Miles Morales that he's gonna have to kind of help and train up, and then you can lead to all these other kind of things. I just feel like the benefit of Andrew Garfield is so key right now, and that's not knocking Tom, but at the same time, I don't know. Like, it's something that I feel inside that there's something more to these movies.
And I know, yeah, and I know we bringing up Andrew, and Andrew as Spider-Man he's the best Spider-Man. Like, you can cut the shit. I don't know. You're not gonna tell me Tom Holland is better than Andrew, but it makes a very interesting thing again between Marvel and Sony,
right?
Because there's one more Spider-Man appearance. Just imagine if you go from the kid Spider-Man that has to learn everything to in an Avengers film, whatever the next Avengers film is going to be, because that's where they think Spider-Man is going to show up in that other appearance for Marvel. If it's an adult Spider-Man, if it's Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, which means he's been Spider-Man for years,
right?
And that Spider-Man is with the Avengers. I think that could be the more interesting thing, because at that point, wouldn't that make Spider-Man closer to the leader of the Avengers?
Yeah. I mean, it'll put him in the big three at the very least.
And I think that's something that I think both parties would be very interested in seeing. If we can get if a grown Spider-Man shows up, because that's the only Spider-Man we haven't seen yet. Every iteration of Spider-Man so far has been him learning to be Spider-Man. What happens when you no longer have to learn to be Spider-Man?
Right. Ultimate, yeah, he did get transported over. The only thing that I was saying, and then Lucas was kind of implying, is that what happened to Venom may not be anything connected to Doctor Strange. That's what we're trying to say. That this may be a Spider-Verse situation that happens pre the whatever happens with Doctor Strange, which I think would be so freaking dope, because I don't know with Peter's meddling what it would actually do, because I think even in the trailer, like Doctor Strange says something along the lines of like, you're supposed to be this, or you're so tied to Spider-Man that we can't do something. I can't remember what it was, something along that verbiage, and I was like, well, this is Spider-Verse related, it's got to be. But
and not only that, again, as you said before, whatever happened with Venom clearly happens before anything else happens in Doctor Strange, because Peter is fighting for no one to know he's Spider-Man. That is the entire purpose of it. As much as people are questioning now, with Venom moving the way he is, why the hell does Spider-Man have a black suit on at one point in time in that trailer?
True. Yeah, that really doesn't make any sense.
But also there was rumors that the Venom from Spider-Man 3 could possibly show up in this film. I think that's the more interesting part. Sony has left that open, and I mean Sony has left that open, of saying you don't necessarily know how many characters from the past Spider-Man movies we are going to put in this movie. The key, the thing that's shocking people is no one thought or no one assumed that Tom Holland's Venom will possibly be involved in this film. And it looks like he could be, because at this point, we still don't actually know who the main villain of Spider-Man movie is. You saw Doc Ock in it, but what makes you think Doc Ock is the main villain? And there's been rumors that the Green Goblin is the main villain.
I really do think that would make the most sense, because he'd be the one to be like, oh yeah, let's tear this man down. He killed my son. You know what I'm saying? Like, honestly, it would be interesting if William Dafoe's character came back and was like.
And also, what did they say about Doc Ock's character? Is that well,
I know what you're about to say. You ain't got to say it.
I think I'm going to have to stop, because I was about to say, did they say that? Or was that a leak that I know about? Because boy, I was about to say so. I was like, nope.
Yeah,
but let's just say, I don't think some of the characters are transported into where Spider-Man is during a certain time period. If that happens, and then that's also what happens with Venom being there at that time, that is going to be extremely interesting, because again, this is nothing but a bunch of Sony characters that they're putting into this film.
Right. Right. So yeah, we're gonna do a part 2 of this. I know Matthew Hayes wanted to be a part of it. I'm gonna be on his sometime tomorrow afternoon. And we're gonna be kind of talking around some things. There's some other things I wanted to talk about, but I think we hit the nail on the head for the stuff. It makes you guys think that this may not just be a Loki or a Scarlet Witch or a Doctor Strange situation. This may just be a Sony pivot. And what does that mean for the future of your beloved Spidey hero?
Hey, I've been saying it for a couple of years now. What happens when these movies are done? You think Sony's just going to say, yeah, we'll give you Spider-Man? No. Especially when they start announcing all of these television shows and other projects involving Spider-Man. That was your sign there that they were like, oh, yeah, we have an idea exactly on how everything is going to run.
Right.
You'll just have to wait and see. And again, the head of Sony came out and said the picture of Spider-Man will be crystal clear after No Way Home. He said that before Venom came out. Someone asked him after Venom came out about it, and they've said their line has always been the same. It will be crystal clear after No Way Home comes out. The plans for Spider-Man moving forward.
Right.
Because did they cast Madam Web? That's all I had to quick. You sure?
They I don't think they casted him. I don't think they casted her yet.
Boy, would that be a hell of a reveal to put at the end of No Way Home.
Why would you say something like that? We only got a certain amount of time. Look, we'll talk about that on our part 2. Okay, we'll talk about what Madam website is. We'll be back later. Hope you guys enjoyed our discussion. Peace, guys.